Hello and welcome to Shoot the Hostage. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sarah.
We're a movie show that delves into a different film each week based around a theme. This season the theme is criminals. Like all good podcasts, this show contains explicit language and mature content, as well as major spoilers for the movie we're covering.
We watched Michael Mann's Thief. So I would like to talk about it, Dan.
Yeah, that's what we're here to do.
1981, as we already said, directed by Michael Mann, starring James Caan, Jim Belushi, Tuesday Weld.
Yep, Willie Nelson.
Willie Nelson. Who can forget Willie Nelson? Me, I forgot.
Yeah, Robert Prosky.
Robert Prosky. It was Robert Prosky's first film.
Yep.
Film debut. He was 50.
And it was also Dennis Farina's first film.
Yes. Yeah. Dennis Farina was actually working as a police officer in Chicago when this film was made.
Yeah, 18 years on the force.
Wow.
Michael Mann brought him in as a consultant and then cast him and we're off to the races.
You there. Get in front of the camera. Do we have a synopsis before we get into the thick of things?
Yeah, sure. Frank is an expert professional safecracker specialised in high-profile diamond heists. He plans to use his ill-gotten income to retire from crime and build a nice life for himself, complete with a home, wife and kids. To accelerate the process, he signs on with a top gangster for a big score. What's your relationship with Michael Mann?
He's my uncle.
Is it?
No.
Could have mentioned that.
We don't have a literal relationship. No. I admire him. He seems like he likes to crack the whip behind the camera.
Seems like a bit of a control freak.
Yeah. Like the results I think speak for themselves, but he does seem like a bit of I hesitate to use the term slave driver, but maybe not the most fun director to be on a set with, but he does get phenomenal performances out of the people in his films.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would call myself a Michael fan. I think what I've seen of his work is pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
This movie included, but I'm not completely well versed in his back catalogue. I feel like you maybe have seen more of his films than I have.
So what was the first Michael Mann movie you saw?
The first one I remember seeing was probably Collateral.
Okay.
I didn't see Heat until after that. I didn't see The Keep until after that.
Okay.
So like quite a latecomer to his work. What about you?
Heat would have been the first one that I saw. I think around 96 and 97.
Yeah.
I remember it coming out, but I hadn't seen it until then because I think it was Christmas and it was like on television or something.
Okay. When did it come out? Was it 94, 95?
95.
95.
It came out at the cinema. And as I say, I hadn't seen it, but one Christmas it was just on. And it's a long movie as well.
Yeah.
And so it was just on kind of in the background. And even at like 12, 13 years old, I was really engrossed in it and I loved it. I think after that, I went back to Manhunter.
Oh, man. Yeah, I always forget Manhunter was him. Of course.
Yep.
Yeah. You prefer that to Silence of the Lambs, don't you?
That's a better movie.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. I haven't seen Manhunter in a long time. So. And then after that, it would have been, I probably went back again, saw Last of Mohicans.
Yeah.
Which is a good film. Which is one of those, I always forget that one's a Michael Mann movie.
Yeah. I think I've only seen it once, in fairness.
I'd quite like to revisit that one soon. And then I got to see Arlie after that, which I loved at the time. I haven't seen it for ages, but I watched it a lot when it came out.
Okay.
It's a tough movie to watch. It's long and some people say that it drags in parts, but it's really well done.
Okay.
And then obviously Collateral, Miami Vice.
Yeah, I didn't care for Miami Vice, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Public Enemies.
Haven't seen
that.
Which
I like. Black Hat.
Haven't seen that.
Ferrari, which is coming out soon, which I will be seeing, definitely. And he's now in pre-production on Heat 2.
Yeah. I mean, not too surprising given how many like legacy sequels are coming out, but it's a strange one to revisit.
Yes, it is. And if it was any old Johnny Newcomer studio, let's get a Heat 2 done, and they just bash it together, I'd probably be, I don't want to say I'd have a problem with it because anything can be good and I'll watch anything.
But it's more likely to be good because it's him.
It's going to be well made as a
Yeah.
minimum. Like, it's going to be a well made film. And I'm really interested to see what he does with it, because I do know that he wrote the novel first, which came out, I think, a couple of years ago, last year, the year before, something like that.
Okay. And is it going to be like a direct adaptation of that?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I've heard him on a podcast. I think it was Marin that I listened to it ages ago when it came out, and I re-listened to it. I don't know what would be considered a spoiler, but it's essentially going to start as soon as the first movie finishes. So you'll see the Val Kilmer character and how he gets out, but then it's going to go back,
Okay.
I believe, into the 80s and swap between the 80s and the early 2000s as a time period. So
they're going to wait. There's going to be a whole new cast then.
So he's recast. Essentially, obviously, you've got.
I mean, obviously, spoilers for Heat, but not everybody makes it out of that alive. So
No. So Adam Driver has been cast as Neil McCauley, Robert De Niro's character.
Interesting.
Al Pacino.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's not listed in the cast, but I guess he could probably play the 2000s one.
He's like 100.
I know. Maybe you could get away with it. Maybe you couldn't. But I bet I think it's probably going to be a complete recast.
Okay. I think they would have to.
I think that's probably the way to do it.
I think that's the smart move.
Yeah.
As weird as it will be.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of Michael Mann, and I love the way he makes his movie.
Fan.
And I've been down a Michael Mannhole this week. But I'm a fan of his movies. I'm a fan of the way that he just is relentless with every detail.
Yeah.
And you can see that and feel it and hear it. And I really admire that. And I really think it's a brilliant way to make movies.
What were you aware of in terms of this film? Because this was a second watch for both of us, but I believe last year was the first watch for both of us.
Yeah.
And that's because you blind bought the Blu-ray. What did you know about this film? What made you buy it?
Well, I listened to, again, Mark Maron.
Right. Okay.
And he was talking to, I think it was the Michael Mann interview. It could have been a James Caan one, but I think it was a Michael Mann one. And Maron was sort of saying, Thief is a brilliant movie. I'm like, what's this Thief? I've not heard of this. I obviously looked up Michael Mann on Letterboxd, and that was his first theatrical feature.
Which is insane.
Yeah. And there was a nice, shiny, brand new Arrow release. So I procured that, watched it, and it was really good. Really enjoyed it.
It floored me.
Yeah, but I didn't really know anything about it. Which is curious.
It's weird for people who are so, like, the both of us are so entrenched in cinema, and we watch at least a movie a day.
Yeah.
It's unusual that there's a film that neither of us had heard of us had been on our radar in some capacity. It's
unusual for us, but it does still happen, which is great. I really enjoy those moments when you come across a hidden gem.
I'm never happier than when I can find an older film that I haven't seen before and that turns out to be incredible.
Yeah.
It's such a good feeling. And that's what happened here.
Yeah.
I mean, up front at the top of the show, I'm going to say I think this is an incredible film. The fact that this was his second feature, the first one was the Jericho Mile, and that was for TV,
which was made for TV. It did get a theatrical release later.
Okay,
I believe in Europe anyway.
Interesting.
But this is the first one that he made with the intention of it being released theatrically, and it is insane. Like the craft that's gone into it, from the opening shot right through to the rolling of the credits, is just a masterclass.
I would go as far as to say most directors don't make a film this good in their entire career.
Yeah.
So the fact that this was number 2 straight out of the gate, you could retire on this.
Yeah.
And still have secured yourself a decent legacy in the industry, I think.
Yeah. Uwe Boll is never going to make a movie like this.
No, he won't make one good film in his career. Don't challenge me to a boxing match, please, Uwe. I would lose.
Take him. You could take him.
No. I'm northern, but I'm not that hard. So do we want to start from the top?
From the top? What you mean in terms of plot, you mean?
In terms of the story, yeah. We've discussed the synopsis. We kind of get thrown straight into the thick of things, don't we?
Yeah, but with the very first part of the movie, you're just introduced to the characters. Frank.
It's nearly wordless.
Yeah, Frank, Barry, and the other one that's in the car, who doesn't have much to say.
Dennis Farina?
No.
Who's wait.
Dennis Farina is one of the heavies, one of Prosky's heavies.
Right, okay.
But yeah, so the first opening, 5 minutes, is them breaking into a safe and robbing some diamonds. Mm-hmm. And it's just a good setup for the movie, because you see Caan's character being a total professional, and they swap the cars and the clothes, and it lets you know that we're dealing with criminals, but also criminals that cover their tracks. They know what they're doing. They're professional.
I think it's particularly notable for the fact that, as I say, it's without dialogue for the most part. And James Caan is on his own using actual equipment that thieves use to break into vaults. Apparently that was a vault that they bought for 10 grand.
Right.
So he is actually breaking into that vault for real.
Right. Okay.
Which is really impressive. And he sells the shit out of it. I don't know how much prep actually went into that, but I know, as you've said, Michael Mann's kind of a stickler for details. So I guess he wanted everything to be as realistic as possible.
Yes, he did. And he obviously employed, we touched on Dennis Farina being a police officer, but then there are obviously criminals as consultants, or ex-criminals rather, as consultants on the movie. And he is known for really immersing himself in these worlds while he's preparing for a production. So he would know the safes and kind of locking mechanisms, and he shows you all of that. It zooms into the locking mechanism on the safes and things like that, and you can see exactly what's happening. I love those close shots. But you can see it. You when we were talking about a very different movie, but Army of the Dead, one of our complaints was that you don't see anything happening. You just see close-ups of people shooting at things, but you don't see the results of that. I feel like Michael Mann is the complete opposite of that, whereas you see everything and to detail. And it's not the most impressive thing as well is that it's not boring.
Not even in the slightest.
It's so satisfying to watch how he unfolds his shots and shows us what's going on.
I think that's a combination of factors. I think it's, as you say, like the close-ups.
Yeah.
The eye for detail that he has, Caan's performance, which we're going to come back to, I'm sure, throughout this. Yeah. But also that Tangerine Dream score.
Oh, isn't it just...
It's like somebody was like, soundtrack my anxiety, but make it synth.
Yeah, it's like bathing in synth, isn't it?
It's phenomenal, and it's so anxiety-provoking. It makes it so tense. Those first opening minutes, we don't really know what the stakes are. We don't know the entire scenario yet. We don't know the characters yet. But it's so tense. Edge of your seat tension. Yeah. And then aside from that, some of the opening shots of like the rainy streets and the neon lights and the refractions, it's beautiful.
Yeah, the way it's shot, camera, the way he uses, because a lot of it's at night, and he's using, as you say, reflections and lighting from other sources like neon signage and that sort of thing. And I don't know, I've got no idea when it comes to lighting and camera and that sort of stuff, but it must be super difficult to light a nighttime shot in the way that he wants it lit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, and this, what was the budget for this was 5 million. I think.
I read 5.5 and I think it grossed 11.5.
Okay. Yeah. And so it wasn't, I don't know if that's a good amount of box office takings in 1981.
I mean, for a film like this to double its budget, that's not too bad.
It probably was okay, but it's fascinating going back and watching it now and just how was not the biggest movie of the first 5 years of the 80s or whatever. It's because there was Star Wars happening.
Yeah, that's true.
James Caan was offered the role of Han Solo, actually.
Really?
Yeah, turned it down.
Wow, that would have been different.
Yeah, there's a few that he turned down, actually. Maybe we'll talk about it later.
Oh yes, please. I'm keen to hear that. Yeah, it's interesting that we're still seeing the influence today.
Yeah.
I mean, as you mentioned, as we were watching it, people like Nicholas Winding Refn, but also like Gaspar Noé, owe a lot to the style of this film. Yeah.
Christopher Nolan is quite honest about him just ripping off Mann, and particularly Heat. Yeah, particularly Heat, and especially for The Dark Knight as well. Yeah, like his influence is all over modern filmmaking. It's great to see.
It's weird though, like it's strange to me that it seemingly was so influential, but it doesn't get talked about in the same breath very much.
Yes. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It seems, I'm not going to call it like a forgotten gem or anything, but I would love to get more eyes on this film.
I think that's often the case though, isn't it? Like you've got your super popular films that are coming out and everyone goes to see, and some of them are enjoyable and fun, but then you've got your ones that kind of fly under the radar but are changing the game, and but it takes a while because maybe they're not super successful, and it takes people to find these, and then they become cult classics, and then 20 years down the line you're getting a really swanky Arrow Blu-ray release and everyone loves it and everyone agrees that it's a brilliant movie and now is super influential. But I feel like with those sorts of films, it takes time for them to enter the the language of cinema and to influence things. So
I would say
so much.
the Swanky Arrow release is not a marker for quality. I would like to point that out. I do own a very comprehensive, brilliantly put together release of Faust, Love of the Damned, and that is dreadful.
Okay.
So while they do like to dip their toe into, you know, the cult
Good
classics,
ones. Yeah.
there is a fair amount of shit on their roster too.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so we start to learn more about Frank as the film goes on.
Yeah.
And again, like we touched on in the show about Hell or High Water, most of the information is passed out through the dialogue. There's no exposition dumps. I feel like in a lesser film, we would be told how he met his partners in crime. We would find out the birth of those relationships. We would see him meet Jesse.
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't be kind of in the middle of all of these relationships. And I think that is a marker of how much Mann respects his audience and the intelligence with which he puts into the scripts that he writes as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of character stuff going on that is not, you're not spoon-fed it, like you said, in a similar way to Hell or High Water. It comes out slowly through the dialogue.
Yeah.
But then also, you really do have to pay attention because, for instance, you mentioned Jesse. When he first sees her in the restaurant, or we first see him seeing her in a restaurant, you think, oh, he's just seen her for the first time.
Yeah, she's caught his eye.
But you figure out, you hear later on that, oh, he's seen her before. And like, he used to be married, but he says, I never tried anything because I'm a straight arrow. I wouldn't do that. So it's like, oh, so he's had a thing for her for a while. But you're not told that immediately. You've got to just watch it and just consume it. And it's like second, third, fourth watches is when these things really, you can enjoy it the first time, be immersed in it and get lost in it. But then these types of films just lend themselves to rewatches. And I prefer that style of filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for films that you can comfort watch over and over again. And you know every beat, you know every line. But I also love films where you get something different out of it each time. Yeah. You pick up something new. And you're right, that's definitely the case here. And I think you're right in that you absolutely have to give this film your full attention.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
For several reasons, the script being the main one, but I think it's interesting to me. Right, so before we watched it for the second time for this show, and you kind of said to me, is this film noir?
Yeah.
And that's not something I'd ever considered until you said it. And as soon as you said those words, I was like, yeah, of course it is. Fuck.
Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that? And I think more than anything, obviously it has quite a like nihilistic, fatalistic viewpoint.
It does,
it's quite pessimistic, I suppose. But also the vernacular that they use, the slang. One that I wrote down specifically is he says, did gags down our merch or something? And like, but it's lines like that you really have to pay attention for because you have to be able to pick up context cues to actually understand what they're talking about a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I'm glad they went that route because it really does help to sell the characters and this lifestyle that they've chosen. But you're right, you really do have to pay attention. You
do. And it's almost like he's setting up his own world though, because like those pieces of dialogue and the way that they're delivered, they're kind of repeated as well. Words like pinch. And they kind of come up over and over again in films like this. And even films, like Dark Knight, and I mentioned about the Nolan influence and stuff like that, they do that too. Like there'll be a word that you don't hear very often used in that context that they're using it in.
It's definitely not like, it's worlds away from a popcorn movie for dummies, You really do have to pay attention. But yeah, all this happens. We also find out that he's a car salesman.
Well, it's a front, isn't it?
Well, is it?
Yeah, I
mean,
think
yes
so.
and no. Obviously, his main focus is the thievery.
Yeah.
But does he own the car lot?
I believe so. Yeah, he owns the car lot. There's a scene where he's walking through the car lot and he's going, Dave, put the Buick on the front and, this one needs a wash and this one needs a roof or whatever. I think he owns it. I think he owns the bar as well.
I couldn't figure that out. I couldn't work out if he owned the bar or if that was just kind of where it became like a criminal hangout, like a known spot where people could meet and wouldn't be bothered by cops or something. I wasn't sure. I
got the impression that he owned the bar and owned the car lot.
Okay.
And they're kind of fronts for his business if he's washing money or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that the car lot would definitely be a means to kind of legitimize him in the eyes of the government or whatever.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a leap to see him in a posh suit driving a flash car.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. But I mean, jewel thief versus car salesman, which one makes him the biggest scumbag? In terms of the other characters that kind of flesh out this world, how do you feel about them? Because at this point, we've kind of met Jesse, who is his love interest. We've met his co-conspirators. We've met Robert Prosky, who is Robert Prosky? Is he kind of like some sort of criminal mastermind? But
in the movie?
Yeah, like he has a larger operation that he wants James Caan to be a part of, right?
Yeah, he just runs shit in Chicago, I guess.
He just wants people to kind of be in debt to him.
Yeah, he's just a crime lord. So he just wants to basically control all of the crime that's going on.
Yeah.
You know, not on my turf sort of thing.
We meet Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
Who was somebody, he was a fellow inmate while James Caan's character was in prison.
Yeah.
Kind of a father figure, we're led to believe.
Yeah, he did 100% is a father figure.
Despite
he actually says that, yeah.
Willie Nelson only being 7 years older than James Caan. They are, by turns, the oldest 41-year-old and 48-year-old I've ever seen.
Well, James Caan's meant to be 35 in this movie.
James Caan is a hard 35 in this film. That's wild.
I know.
That was the only part that kind of made me go, fuck off, no.
Yeah.
But I guess that sort of makes sense as well, because he's portraying this kind of hardened criminal who's been in jail for like, what, 12 years?
11 years.
11 years?
Said,
Yeah, so he's been behind bars for a third of his life.
Yeah.
He went into prison for a pretty minor...
Stealing $40.
Yeah, and then ended up serving a much, much, much longer sentence for manslaughter.
Yeah, because he got in some trouble and was defending himself. But that's how he's built his identity, was in prison. It's how he learned how to survive. But just going back to the characters, I think Prosky's character is a super interesting one. He is the crime lord. But at the start of the movie, when he's just getting acquainted with Frank, I kind of am like, oh, he seems all right. Well, he seems okay. He's helping him out. Like, I'm sure he's a nice criminal. So when the turn comes at the end, I am surprised. But I think that's just because he sells it so well, Prosky.
I think it's a combination of factors. I think he does a great job in the role. I think you're right. He sells that aspect of the character. But also, when I think of Robert Prosky, I think of him as like this genial grandpa type, like his role in Gremlins 2. We
grew up seeing him as that character, didn't we? Yeah.
So it's weird then to go backwards in time and see him as a criminal, as a crime lord, crime boss.
I think he was actually the grandfather in The Last Action Hero.
Was he?
Yeah, okay. The projectionist guy that gives him the magic ticket.
Right, yeah.
He was... You mentioned Gremlins 2, didn't you?
Gremlins 2, yeah. When I picture Robert Prosky, I picture him dressed as Dracula.
As a Dracula,
from Gremlins 2.
He's also the garage owner in Christine.
Shit.
Yeah. Oh. He's like, no, you're smoking in here, Arnie. And he's that guy.
Oh, yeah.
So when did Christine come out? I want to say 82.
I was going to say 83.
Yeah, you might be right with that. But it was very close to this.
Yeah. Okay. So he's had a pretty broad career.
Yeah. Yes. In the 80s and 90s, he did quite a wide range of different projects.
Man's got range.
And he definitely was one of those, it's that guy guys when I was growing up.
Yeah, for sure. He was a J.K. Simmons, Christopher McDonald type.
Character-wise,
what do you think of Jessie? Were you trying to think of her name? I
wasn't going to say Jessie. I was going to say someone else, but I did want to get to Jessie. So maybe we'll talk about Jessie and then maybe that other thing.
Let's talk about Jessie because she's interesting.
Yeah, she's a good character. She doesn't have a huge role in it.
No.
But she is kind of the basis for his change initially. And it's interesting, his character arc in this story, which I'm sure we'll get to. But Tuesday World, particularly in that diner scene, is great.
They're both spectacular in that diner scene. I think the first time I watched it, I was like, well, his delivery is insane. It's so strange. And the more I sat with it, the more it made sense to me, I guess. I did read that James Caan intentionally, he wanted Frank to be a very well fleshed out character. So he chose to speak very clearly and very slowly because he saw Frank as somebody who was like economical with time. He didn't want to have to repeat himself.
Yeah.
He wanted to make sure he was understood the first time around.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe, I don't know, maybe some of the reason he got into trouble in the first place is misunderstandings. So he's trying not to repeat that.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, is it no contraction? Or is that the thing when you're having a baby?
Contractions are when you're having a baby. I don't know. I really like that character choice though in hindsight, but it did strike me as quite odd. That conversation that they have, he's quite big and bold. His performance is very large.
Yeah, I think just prior to the diner scene as well, when he's in the car and they're driving and he's just
and he's yelling.
Yeah, I wear $800 suits.
Yeah, and he fully like manhandles her out of the pub as well, at which point I started to lose sympathy for him a little bit.
Well, that's the thing though, isn't it? Like he's not a nice guy.
Mm-mm.
He's an arsehole.
He's a massive contradiction.
That's his survival technique. That's his cope. How he deals with staying alive is to not care about anyone.
Yeah.
Push everyone away.
But also I think a huge part of that is that his formative years were spent in prison.
Yeah.
Like from his early 20s.
Yeah.
He's been in prison.
Yeah.
So all of that important kind of maybe academic growth, career growth, socializing, all of that would have been perhaps a little bit stunted and a little bit off.
And even before prison, though, there's the part in it, we'll talk about the
He's
child
not a
adoption scene, don't
well-educated
you worry,
man.
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he mentions that he was state raised as well. So
Yeah.
it's, while I don't like this guy, like he's
Mhm.
not someone that I would hang around with and think he's a bit of a bellend.
He's not all bad.
He's not all bad, but you can see how someone gets to that by finding out more about his past.
Yeah.
And you just think, yeah, like, you know, it's not my cup of tea, but, you know, he's a product of the system.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, going back to that diner scene, I think I sort of, I took over a little bit. You were talking about Tuesday Weld, who is also really impressive in that scene. The back and forth that they have is really interesting, and you learn a lot more about her, and like she's got a bit of a past, but it's kind of vague. It's none of it's spelled out for you. You kind of have to pick up, as I said, the context cues and fill in the blanks yourself. Yeah,
I really enjoy that conversation, and I think I'm a big fan of important, heavy conversations, but also at the same time, in between, you're saying or doing everyday monotonous things. So she talks about her past and how dark her past was, and then she says, "Can you pass the cream?"
Yeah.
And James Caan sort of smiles, takes off his coat, and then, you know, gets the cream, and, you know, it turns out it's cottage cheese. So they get a new one, but then he's trying to light a cigarette and that doesn't work, and that wasn't planned. I gathered, but he puts it down like a fucking pro and just carries on. And I loved it. It was great. But yeah, that whole dynasty, they really bounce off each other in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's really enjoyable. And it's quite similar to the diner scene in Heat.
Yeah, there are quite a few similarities between those two films, actually.
Yeah, it's very similar because I think it's the most revealing of both of those characters.
Yeah.
One of the most important scenes in both of those movies, and they kind of both, in each movie, those scenes kind of make the film what it is, in my opinion. Like, they're the pivotal scenes.
It's kind of the core, the heart of the movie.
But
almost.
It's just two people sitting down having a chat.
Mm-hmm.
It's so well done.
That's how you know the script's banging.
Yeah.
But also, other actors may not have sold it as well. I did read a little bit about the casting process for Frank, because James Caan was not choice number one. There were a number of people considered for this role, despite the fact that he fucking sold the shit out of that performance. And Michael Mann was super happy with it. And James Caan, obviously, before his death, kind of went on record to say that diner scene is one of the things he's most proud of in his entire career. And he had such a good career. So that's like really saying something.
He said that Thief is the favourite movie that he's done.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
It's
to me.
My favourite James Caan movie.
Oh, would I say the same? It's between this and Misery for me.
Yeah. I think Misery would probably be number 2 in terms of James Caan's performances for me. Mm-hmm. And then Way of the Gun was quite good. Eraser. He was in that. Not a fan of Elf. You can leave Elf.
Yeah, Elf can jump off a cliff.
Suck it.
But yeah, apparently Jeff Bridges was considered for the role.
Okay. He was in the Jericho Mile, wasn't he?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay.
I think in the end they decided he looked a bit too young to play a hardened criminal.
Yeah, and a bit too a bit too handsome at that age as well. At that point,
probably.
But
Bit too
maybe
clean cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need a more ruggedy James Caan type.
Yeah. You need the oldest looking 35-year-old on the face of planet Earth.
Yeah.
But yeah, they also considered Al Pacino.
Yeah. Okay.
Which would have worked, but I'm glad they went with Caan.
Yes.
He must have been keen to work with Al Pacino for a while, from the sounds of things.
Yeah, well, Pacino did a lot of good work in the 70s.
He did, yeah.
You know, so I can see why.
But yeah, the two other people who were considered for Frank are kind of slightly more outliers to my mind. Roy Scheider.
I can see that.
Can
actually,
you?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can. And I loved Roy Scheider. I'm like one of the few people left on the face of this earth who loved Sequest DSP. And I will quite proudly state that.
No.
I still enjoy it. But yeah, I struggle to see him in that role.
I can't see it.
Can't.
Yeah.
And the other one, which is the most out there, is Gene Hackman.
Yeah, again, I can see that.
Can you?
Do you think that's out there?
I do.
I think that's well within his, like, you think about French Connection, those sorts of films.
I guess.
Lex Luthor.
I guess maybe I'm more familiar with the latter half of his career, so I see him as this like cantankerous old dude.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
I guess the conversation stuff
that. I buy those too.
Do you?
But, you know, James Caan was brilliant, so I wouldn't want to swap him out for anybody.
I think because he nailed the role so much, I just really struggle to imagine anyone else doing it any like all of the people that we've talked about are excellent actors, don't get me wrong, but Caan was the one. He was the right choice.
Yeah, he was the one. Willie Nelson, curious casting.
Did he do much acting back
I've got
then?
no idea. I don't think I've ever seen him in another movie.
I have, but only playing himself.
Yeah, okay. Maybe there's like a stoner comedy or something.
I've been aware of Willie Nelson most of my life because my dad's a huge country music fan.
Yeah.
So I was aware of him as this like perpetually young stoner dude who was this revered musician.
Yeah.
So seeing him in this role was kind of odd.
It was odd, and he's not in it an awful lot. And I thought he was surprisingly good in the scenes that he had. However, I don't entirely buy. It's probably my one criticism. I didn't love it.
Okay.
I didn't buy that his character would have survived in prison all that time. He seemed like a very sensitive guy. The way he was just
They're sometimes the most terrifying, though.
Are they?
Yeah,
Okay.
in my experience.
Okay.
People who remain calm and are quiet and unassuming, they can be like the biggest wild cards.
Oh, fair enough. Maybe it's just me not knowing very many psychopaths. So. But just the way his eyes were kind of darting around, and it was just like had a very soft smile, and I just thought, he seems I don't know, I don't really buy that relationship. But that's just me.
But then you only really saw him interact with James Caan, who was his kind of stand-in son figure.
True.
So he's going to be a little bit gentler with someone who he cares about than with the average person.
Yeah, you don't see him interact with any other people, do you?
No. In fact, I think the only other scene he's in is when he's dying in hospital.
Yeah,
which was
I
kind
believe
of
so.
Heartbreaking.
Because he's in prison. He wants to get out because he's got heart problems, and he wants to get out before he dies, because that's the big thing. You can't die in prison.
Yeah.
It's fine. You die outside. That's just part of life. That's fine. But don't die in prison. So Frank bribes a lawyer to, in turn, bribe a judge.
Yeah.
Which is another one of those scenes that if you're not paying attention to, you won't. If you're not paying attention to this movie or any Michael Mann movie, and I think I heard this on Blank Check podcast as well, and David said this. He said that if you're kind of half watching it, if you're on your phone doing something and you look up at this movie and you catch most of it but not all of it, you're just going to go, oh, it was just a guy who robbed a place and then just had to rob stuff and then got all the bad guys, like nothing really happened. You've got to really watch it. Yeah,
for it to be a rewarding experience.
Yeah, and
definitely.
And see all of these kind of understated, not hidden, but you really have to be looking for it. And that's one of those scenes where I don't think I noticed it the first time.
No, I was about to say the same thing. I don't think I picked up on it either.
You see that the judge goes, well, I'm not sure about letting out Willie Nelson, and he puts 8 fingers on his face like that.
So what happens is, the judge puts 8 fingers on his face, then the lawyer puts 4 fingers on his face, and then the judge puts 6.
Yeah.
And then the lawyer mirrors the 6
yeah.
as if to like accept his counter offer of $6,000.
And he's like, oh, okay then. Like, can they agree on a 6? And then they get outside to the elevator, and James Caan gives the lawyer an envelope full of 10 grand.
Yeah.
And the lawyer's like, great, I can keep 4 grand for myself. Yeah, no, that's so subtle. You're not picking that stuff up if you're not watching it properly.
Mm-hmm. And you have to think about it to actually understand it as well.
Yeah.
It's not like on face value, it's just like, what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah.
Which is what makes it so rewarding. I also would like to make a quick mention of Frank's hobby.
Safe cracking?
No, safe cracking I think is his main focus, I would say.
Procuring
he's also
children?
Scrapbooking.
Oh, yeah.
his cute little collage that he made in prison.
He's got that little collage, isn't he? Yeah.
Which I think, the first time I watched it, it struck me as really odd that this 35-year-old
pulled out a
man,
crayon drawing.
Yeah, he's cut out photos and he's made this collage, and it seems really out of place. On second watch, I think it really helped to hammer home just how stunted he is emotionally. He talks about having been married before. He talks about his past in terms of crime, prison, all of that sort of stuff. His businesses maybe being fronts. But I think it's those little things that are far more telling about his character.
Yeah.
And I think it really sort of hammers home why he appears so desperate to meet someone and to have a kid and have this white picket fence, 2.4 children, family, American dream life.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's necessarily coming from a genuine place. No. I don't think that's necessarily like something that's driving him. I think he's been told, society's told him that's what he should have by that age. Yeah. So he's just desperately trying to make this collage a reality.
I think, I agree with you on that. He's probably had this idea in his head for a long time. He's got an X amount of money and do X amount of scores to get the life that he wants. And kind of just on the cusp of him getting what he wants. I think that's interesting because his character arc is you don't see it very often. His character arc is basically, I was right in the beginning. I was alone and I didn't care about anyone and I survived and I was doing great. And then he meets someone, which is part of his plan, and he's starting to get the house and the money and the family.
They try to adopt a child.
And they do adopt a child.
They buy a child.
They procure a child, yeah.
Adopt is generous.
Yeah. But when he is on the cusp of achieving all of that, I think that and then at the same time, he's also losing a grip on his work. Like he's exposed now.
Yeah, I don't really think we ever get to know who Frank is. I'm not sure Frank knows who Frank is. He's almost just like a cipher who's had these accumulative life experiences, but is trying to be something that he's not.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think the most telling moment is that there's a couple of them at the end of the movie. One where he kind of looks in a mirror and I feel like he's seen himself truly for the first time for what he is and not what he thinks he should be.
Yeah.
And also, the car lot, when he's set fire to the car lot, he's literally burning his life down. And the bar, he screws up the collage and throws it out the window because I think he knows that
it's bullshit.
It's bullshit. That's not the life that he wants. And actually, that trying to achieve that life has been his downfall in many ways.
Yeah.
And the only way to correct things is just to go nuts and basically kill everybody.
Yeah, go full scorched earth.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he sends away Jessie at the end of the movie. He sends her off and it's like, you need to give. I want you to be alive, basically. You're in danger, go. But that's not really the reason, is it? Like on face value, you think he's trying to protect her, and then after he's done his thing, maybe he goes to meet her. But then the more I think about it, and having watched it a second, and I watched it another half a time as well, yeah, I think he's just done with that. I think he just wants to go back to his old life.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. Yeah, I think the way in which he sends Jessie and the child away, as you say, initially it's just like, oh, he's trying to protect them. He wants them to stay alive. But he's so cold
Yeah.
when he does it. There's not an ounce of emotion there,
No.
other than maybe a hint of anger, or like he's lost his patience.
Yeah. And you could read that like, oh, he thinks that he's going to die.
Yeah,
So
like there's a sense of urgency and he just wants them to be safe.
He doesn't think he's going to make it through this, so he
Mhm.
just needs to get rid of her. No talk about women meeting up.
Mhm.
But he must think that, oh, maybe I get away with this. So, and he doesn't really have a plan B for them meeting up in the future, which you would have if you really wanted that life.
Yeah, no, he just, that's it.
Yeah.
That's him drawing a line under his attempt at a normal life.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So he's got a baby, and then giving her, just being like, fuck off, you got to look after that kid now.
Yeah.
What a bastard.
Well, it's a weird subplot, isn't it? Because we learn during the diner scene that Jessie can't have children of her
That's
own.
right.
We don't get to find out the reasons, but it's sort of this layer of tragedy that's kind of added to her character. They attempt to adopt a child through the conventional channels, and that does not go well, but is, like you said earlier, really revealing about both of their characters. She has her own checkered past. She's got a strange history, but she's far more adept at dealing with people on a normal plane.
She knows how to live in the real world.
Yeah. How to toe the line and be respectful, and he's just completely lost. He
hasn't got a clue. He tries to bribe the child adoption worker by giving her a gold ring.
Yeah.
So will that get me a child?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just not in touch with reality at all. And as I said earlier, like that's when you find out that he was brought up by the state.
Yeah.
And that's when you think, oh, you know, he was
starting to make
state
sense
raised,
now.
then prison, then he gets out, thief. He's an asshole, but I know why.
Yeah, he's been institutionalized for half of his life. So.
Yeah, and in that scene is probably was my least favorite bit of dialogue because of some of the words that he uses.
Well, I wanted to talk about that.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask how you feel about it because that much is obvious. He uses some
unacceptable
really
language,
off-color language. I think he stops short at slurs, but he may as well have said that because he's talking about, well, give us one of the less desirable children then, and kind of uses, words that we know not to. It's curious because we're not really supposed to like Frank. He's not a likable person. He has some of my sympathy, but that was really shocking through a modern day lens. It was really shocking to hear.
I mean, you got to remember, it was made 40 years ago. We do bear this in mind when we're watching it.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah, and listen, the movie I think is a masterpiece. I think it's a genuine cinematic classic. Mm-hmm. And that piece of dialogue wouldn't get written today. And,
I hope not. And
it shouldn't. However, it is interesting because it puts you, firstly, in that time period. There was a lot of that stuff going around.
Oh, yeah. It was pretty commonplace.
And there still is. But also, he's a bad guy. Also, he's been in homes when he was a kid. He's been in prisons. He's been around this language. He's been around way worse language than this. Mm-hmm. So by comparison to his peers, he's probably one of the better ones. And I get that from everything we've seen and heard about his character. So while I don't like that, I don't care for that kind of vernacular, it is fitting within the time period and serves to show us a bit more about who he is.
It's weird, isn't it? Because it's not... I don't think the character is racist.
No, I don't think so either.
Because it seems to be like Frank's own very odd brand of well-meaning, almost. Because if he was truly racist, he wouldn't say, well, we'll take a non-white baby and we'll look after it and we'll love it.
Yeah.
I do feel like the dialogue is, as you say, a product of its time.
Yeah.
And while we shouldn't necessarily overlook it and it's important to mention it, it's a little bit more... I mean, I'm white. It's not my thing to forgive.
But it's a character choice, isn't it? He's telling you who he is with those bits of dialogue.
Yeah. And also, like, a lot of horror movies that I love get called misogynist and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think it's really important to recognize the distinction between a film that features a misogynist character and a film that is misogynist in its nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because those two things are very, very different.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's easier to overlook because of those reasons.
Yeah. What about the last 40 minutes or so of the movie? What do you think of, because you had the initial heist in the beginning, and then you have the middle section of the film where he loses his original heist and he has to get more heist to catch up with the heist.
Yeah.
So he does more heist with Robert Prosky, but Prosky he's now working for him. Prosky said, he's given him the time and
he's
the place.
Made him false promises as well about he's just got to do this one big job.
Yeah.
And then he'll be released from all expectations.
Yeah, you're going to earn 750,000, and then that's his last score, essentially. But he tells him to figure out how to break in with the alarm and the safe. That's the middle section of the movie, is them trying to work out how to do that. And also cut between things like the adoption and diner scenes that we've been talking about earlier.
And the police. I think that's really
important. And the police, we've not even touched on the police, have we?
No. So one of the main guy, I want to say Detective Urizi. He was played by one of the main technical consultants on the film, and he was a former jewel thief.
Yeah.
And the main heist was based on something that he actually masterminded.
Right.
And I was so curious about this because how
what?
Well, how is that man not in jail?
Well, maybe he did his time already.
No, but I found out, and it's because he agreed to come on as a consultant and to be open about it all because his crimes were beyond the statute of limitations.
Right.
So he could technically no longer be prosecuted.
Right, okay. That's crazy.
But it shows, again, the depths to which Michael Mann wanted realism.
Yeah, well, like I said, he just immerses himself in this world and he casts these people. And yeah, like you said, he's done a role swap as well.
Dennis
He's made Dennis
Farina
Farina a criminal
and
that dude as the cop.
Yeah.
It's curious why you would do it that way around as well, but interesting as well because...
It works.
And particularly with, going back to Heat again, I'm going to keep bringing up Heat because it's another Michael Mann movie, but it has a lot in common with this movie and shares a lot of DNA. Like you got the two leads and they're kind of two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
You've got the criminal and the cop, but they could quite easily swap roles and they're both professionals and they're good at their jobs. And that's why they do what they do because that's all they know how to do.
Between season 1 and 2, that's a theme that I'm seeing more and more.
Yeah.
These cop movies and movies about criminals have so much in common.
Yeah.
Bringing up Heat again, there is a point at which the detectives have planted a tracker on Frank's car, but Frank figures it out because obviously their home was bugged as well. So he became inherently suspicious. Yeah. But he ditches the tracker on a bus that's going to Iowa, I want to say.
Right.
And that's very similar to something that happens in Heat. So there are definite overlaps between the two.
But yeah, I think it's just interesting that he would swap over the cop and the criminal characters because they're so kind of entwined in their nature. So he probably just wanted to get a slightly different take on something that he was looking for. Yeah, it's curious and interesting. I like it.
I really, really, really enjoy the big heist scene.
Yeah, well, going back to the last 40 minutes or so, it is the heist, isn't it? You've got, a 10, 15 minute scene?
So cool.
It is very cool.
I don't think this film in any way, shape or form glorifies a criminal lifestyle, but they do make stealing diamonds look cool as fuck.
I mean, all I wanted to do after having watched this movie for a second time was go and play GTA.
Oh, right. I thought you were going to say go and buy a blowtorch.
No. But yeah, so he's been figuring out how to get into the safe. He's got a metal guy that's built him a tool.
Yeah, there's that conversation actually again that uses loads of slang that I was unfamiliar with, and they're kind of talking about the breakdown of the metals that are in the safe they need to get in, and we're going to have to create a whole new tool because some of them are soft metals, some of them are hard metals, but they don't outright say any of this stuff. It's all very technical language, but again, you have to really work to figure out what they're saying and what it all means. And apparently that was intentional because Michael Mann decided that they just needed to sell it. It almost didn't matter if the audience understood. They don't need to know the science behind it. It just needs to sound real. And I think they achieved that really well. Yeah,
definitely. But so he's built that big old rod for them it's the hot rod, right? It's a hot rod.
I can't remember what the actual tool is called. I did look that up.
It's a big old fire stick.
Some kind of something Lance. I know that much.
James Lance?
No. It was not the actor from Teachers.
So that's, I mean, that whole last 40 minutes, you've got a 10-minute sequence of just a Tangerine Dream music playing over them breaking into the vault.
Again, so good, so tense.
Getting through the roof and finding the wires, and then using the radio to send a code over the radio, and then ultimately breaking into the safe with the big James Lance. And then you've got two people as well with fire extinguishers, so if there's any naked flames and something catches there, they can put the fire out. But that's like a 10-15 minute sequence, and towards the end of the movie, and it's so well done. It might be my favorite heist scene from any movie.
Wow.
I can't think of one that tops it. It's certainly not Army of the Dead.
No. Definitely not. No. Definitely not. Or Army of Thieves, for that matter. I think one of my favorite stills from this film is just when he's like sitting back, like he's done his part now, and he kind of sits back in the chair and just watches it unfold. I think maybe he has a cigarette. I don't know. I might have retconned that in my memory just for added cool. But it just looks incredible.
Yeah, it's super well done, and it's what everything in the movie has been leading up to.
Yeah,
and he does that. But then you look at I'm not looking at the clock because I'm just immersed in this movie, but let's say that I looked at the clock. There's still 20 minutes of the movie to go, and you think, what's going to go on here? And then that's obviously where he gets screwed over by Leo. And Leo's kind of like, oh, you're not giving you your 750 grand. How much did you give him? Like 20 grand or something.
Well, we have that brief moment after the heist where we just have like 3 minutes of reprieve.
Oh, at the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's it. In any other movie, that's where it would have ended. He's achieved the American dream. He can retire now. Everything's peachy. He's got the most dense chest hair I've ever seen on a human.
Yeah.
Like everything's peachy.
Yeah.
But as you say, we've still got 20 minutes to go.
Yeah. So clearly things are going to go south, and they do, because Prosky is Leo is trying to screw over Frank basically, and not give him his money. I guess he still wants him to carry on working for him, and he wants Frank to still be earning money for him and for him to control him. Mm-hmm. And that's when he really turns. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed Prosky's performance, particularly on second watch, because at the beginning I quite liked him.
He seems pretty genial.
Obviously not the best character, but we were watching a movie about criminals here. But then when he turns at the end, I'm like, oh, you're a nasty bastard. Like he properly turns. He's like, no, I'll kill your family. I'll kill your kids. You all belong to me.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it.
But even like the delivery of that is not worlds away from his performance throughout the rest of the movie. It's just a very subtle change.
Yes.
And it's brilliantly done.
Subtle but big and effective. And I'm just like, oh no. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. But at that point, you kind of realize, oh shit, everything's going to fall apart. And as we've said, Frank is not an honourable man, but I did feel bad for him in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, I don't like the guy, but you are still rooting for him.
It's weird.
You're rooting for him to survive the whole thing.
He's a very strange anti-hero. Yeah.
I don't quite know what I want the resolution of the film to be, but I don't want him to die.
No.
I know that.
Yeah.
I want him to make it out of this alive. He's out of all of the criminal characters, he's probably the best one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even James Belushi, we haven't really spoke about James Belushi, but he's not in it that much, is he? This was also his first film, I think.
It was, yeah, it was.
Do you notice how shiny his jacket was?
I didn't.
No.
I didn't. I
was looking for a scorpion, but there wasn't one on it.
Well, Nicholas Winding Refn, we've already mentioned, he definitely took some stuff from this film,
definitely, particularly for Drive. It's just insane.
Down to the poster.
Yeah, but I feel like the trope of cool jackets in movies probably came from Michael Mann in Thief, because Caan wears a lot of cool jackets in this.
There's a point at which he wears this grey leather jacket. Yeah. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen.
I quite liked it.
I hated it. It's something my dad would wear.
Oh no, I've got one on the way.
No.
Every parcel coming up. So
I will not be signing for that. Yeah, I don't know. I love that switch when you realise everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. He packs off Jesse and the kid. He's kind of... He never loses his cool. He always seems like he's in control, even when he's in kind of meltdown mode, and he starts, as I said, like the soundtrack goes up a little notch, and like he scrunches up the collage and it signals him going full scorched earth, quite literally, and that he sets fire to the bar, he sets fire to the car lot. both of which looked incredible.
Yeah. of
Apparently,
course,
they set fire to the car lot at 4 a.m.
Right.
in the morning
Yeah.
because they wanted a quiet set, but it still drew a crowd of about 2,000 people.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I suppose it would do. If there was a car lot on fire outside, you'd
Yeah.
be like, oh, why is there a fire?
And also the house that they blew up, there was almost like a fascia
Yeah.
around a real house, and they wanted to blow that up while leaving the house intact.
Yeah.
It did not work.
Oh, dear.
And I did read that the house, it broke the foundations. The
Yeah.
house was almost irreparably damaged, and it was eventually bulldozed, and they built 3 more houses on the lot where it had been.
Blimey. Okay. Well, I hope that whoever was living there was handsomely compensated.
They were put up in a hotel in the short term. I know that much.
I hope it was a really nice hotel.
Yeah, 5-star, nothing
No one's
less.
home should be blown up for the sake of a movie.
No.
So I really hope that I hope they made something out of it.
Yeah, me too.
I hope they found the diamonds.
We are, of course, assuming that they were real.
They probably were, no, Michael Mann. He probably did a real bank heist.
Yeah.
It's probably all real.
Yeah, oh God.
The whole movie is probably more of a documentary, just filmed James Caan breaking into NatWest or something.
I would watch the hell out of that.
And so would I.
So I mean, we've got to talk about the ending, the finale, the shootout.
Yeah, because he's obviously pissed off that Leo is trying to control him and keep his money. My money's in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, fuck this, Jesse, you're taking the kid, you can fuck off. And he's like, I'm gonna go and burn my whole life down, like you said, tool up, go back, find Leo, and he wants to just take everyone out. I guess he's
his intentions are very clear. He wants everyone involved
gone.
Yeah,
because Barry's been killed, Jim Belushi's character, so he hasn't got those ties anymore.
Quite a violent death as well.
Very violent death. And I think he knows that the only way he's getting out of this situation and back to some sort of life that he has control over is by taking everybody out. He knows that if he continues working for Leo, he's in his pocket for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So his only way out is to, and as he has learned throughout his life, and we find out throughout the film, is to fight and go hard and just be really super aggressive, because then maybe you survive. That's how he's learned how to survive. The prison scene it tells us about in the diner is pretty much the same thing. He attacked someone with the wrench or bar or whatever it was, and those actions led to him staying alive in prison. And him going super big and violent here leads him to staying alive at the end of the movie.
His attitude is clearly, well, it's me or you, and it's not going to be me.
Yeah, and he goes for it. And for some reason, the two gangsters are just hanging around reading a newspaper and drinking milk.
Well, they've got to have some downtime.
Yeah.
Don't begrudge an aging crime lord his milk and cookies.
Yeah. But I don't rate Leo's security system very much, considering he's a crime boss. Lord knows how much money he's got in that house.
True.
Or evidence. Like, well, maybe I would have a bit more security. I'd have a moat and fill it with serpents and tripwire bombs. And,
you would Home Alone the shit out of your house.
I'd have all of the traps that are in the army, outside the Army of the Dead safe, I would have around my house if I was Robert Prosky playing Leo.
Well, maybe that's just an indication of how arrogant he is.
Yeah, that's true.
And untouchable he feels.
Yeah, he really thought he was untouchable. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that is a good point, actually. But he just goes in the house and slowly works. And it's interesting because while he's slowly working his way through the house, don't get the Tangerine Dream score.
We don't.
It's quiet.
No.
It's just quiet, and it's so tense because we've had that score pretty much throughout the whole movie. And for what we thought was the climax at the time being the bank heist, and then it gets to that and it's just quiet and he's just walking around and it's so well done.
It's really unsettling.
It's very unsettling because and first time watch, you don't know how it's going to go down. Like it could go either way. You know that Tuesday Wells' character has gotten away, Jesse. So you think, oh, maybe everyone dies here. Maybe Frank dies. Maybe Leo dies. But I didn't think it would be, I guess, the happy ending that it kind of is. It's a bittersweet ending.
I don't think I would call this a happy ending at all.
Would you not?
No.
Oh, we're very different.
This is not his walking off into the sunset moment.
Well, it's a nihilist movie, isn't it? Like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's him.
It's very fitting with a film noir ending.
Yeah. But I think it's him realising who he is, as we've touched on before, and him He's not literally walking off into the sunset, but he kind of is. Like, it's dark, so there's no sunset. But the last shot is him just walking away, and it's shot through the trees.
I guess I don't really know what he's walking towards, though. I don't
think he does.
So ambiguous. But I love that. I love that. I don't want everything tied up in a bow. It's the wrong sort of film. That would have felt forced.
No, but
alien.
It feels complete to me, though. Like he's going back to how he was before. Like I said, I feel like his character arc in this movie is realizing that he was correct in the beginning, and I don't see that.
When I say ambiguous, all I mean is it is a complete story. I just mean nobody really knows what is in store for him.
Where we go from here,
yeah. And I did read that Michael Mann and James Caan had very different views on where Frank ended up. Michael Mann had a very, very pessimistic view and thought, he's either going to go back to a life of crime or end up dead, whatever.
Yeah.
James Caan was just like, no. He's so determined. He's so single-minded. He lives. He gets back. He recovers some of his former life at the very least.
Okay.
So they had opposing views.
Right.
Which I find interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what's great about it. It is so open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Even to the people involved.
Yeah, no, I like those. I like those movies. But I think the key is that you get enough information that you could go either way with how you think things are ending.
Yeah.
Like the Guard is a good example of that when we spoke about that in the last season. Like that's an ambiguous ending. And I think, and that's another example where director and star had different ideas about what the ending meant and what came next for that character. Obviously, it's not going to happen now, because James Caan obviously is gone.
Yeah.
But I would have killed to watch a sequel to this movie.
Oh, God, yeah.
By James Caan, starring obviously James Caan and Michael Mann. And I think it's one of those where it'd be super interesting because you could make it 30 years after him. And where is Frank now? Mm-hmm. But that would have been something I really would have loved to have seen.
Yeah, me too. I was going to actually mention earlier, like this is just over 2 hours and it is the breeziest 2 hours.
It feels,
I could have watched a third hour of this quite happily.
It feels really tight. It feels really lean.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because there's a period of about an hour in the movie where there's not a lot of action. It's a lot of talking.
Yep.
But I think with the score and the interesting scenes and the way lines are delivered, it just keeps you super engaged.
Yeah, it elevates the whole thing.
Yeah, and then like I said, it gets to the last 40 minutes of the film, and then that breezes by as well, and it's finished, and all of a sudden you're putting it on again.
Yeah,
great. What a movie! So
to sum up, we both really, 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 really dig Thief.
Yes, and it's funny because the first time I watched it, I was really excited to sit down and watch it because it's a Michael Mann film that I hadn't seen. I like criminal movies and movies with heists and that sort of thing, and so when I first watched it, I wouldn't say I was underwhelmed, but I was a little bit, probably similar to what I was saying before, like it's quite a simple movie.
Yeah. But
the second watch, it really stuck for me.
I remember when we watched it for the first time, and I remember being surprised that I got more out of it than you did.
I thought it was really...
so sold on first watch.
I thought it was really good, but I don't know. It might have been an expectation thing. I don't know what was going on.
Maybe, yeah. I had practically zero expectations, so that could have played a part.
But I think this is quite... I don't know if this is my second or third favourite Michael Mann movie now.
I think it might be my first.
I was going to ask you what it would be for you. I assume this is
above Heat for me.
Yeah, yeah. Heat will always be my favourite, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
I think most people consider that to be the better film.
But honestly, I'd probably put Thief on. I'll probably watch Thief more than I'll watch Heat because of the length of the movie, and it's a lot breezier.
Yeah.
And Ali, I do love Ali as well, but that is difficult. That takes real work to sit down and watch that movie from start to finish. But it's worth it, in my opinion. Maybe we'll get round to it one day.
Maybe
we'll go down another Michael Mannhole. Because we were talking about when we were doing the lineup for this season, we had Heat on the shortlist. Didn't we?
Did, yeah, but we opted for this instead.
And I think it was the right move.
I have more to say about Thief than I do about Heat. I've got a couple of bits of trivia before we completely wrap up.
Okay.
Did you know the original title was supposed to be Violent Streets?
No.
I'm really, really glad they didn't go with that.
Yeah, it's not great, is it?
Thief is really short and punchy. I enjoy that a lot. Tangerine Dream came on kind of further into the project because Michael Mann initially wanted there to be quite a bluesy soundtrack.
Right. Yeah, more noir, I guess.
Yeah, more traditional
Yeah.
noir. But I think the synth really is something that elevates this film.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you know that they were nominated for a Razzie for worst score for this movie?
Get out.
Mm.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah.
What were they up
crazy, isn't it?
against?
Holy
shit.
I don't know. I don't know what it would have been up against in 1981.
Were there any movies that
82.
came out in 81 that were just fart noises? Because, like, what the fuck?
Some man sits on whoopee cushion. I don't know,
It's
but
excellent.
it blew my mind as well. Yeah, it's one of the great scores. Like, I've got it on rotation. It's in my film score playlist now on Spotify. It's great.
I would say if I had one complaint about the score, it's that it's perhaps a little bit repetitive. But that's it. That's
Okay.
if that's like me trying to find something that is less than stellar.
Yeah.
And the last bit of trivia is, obviously this was based on a book. The author was himself a criminal.
Right.
And was in prison during the production of the film.
Right. Okay, so just telephone calls then.
I guess so, yeah.
Right. Do you want to know what else, before we sign off,
Mhm.
what else James Caan turned down?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so he was offered the role, we spoke about Gene Hackman earlier, he was
Mhm.
offered the role of Popeye Doyle in French Connection,
Okay.
1971.
I could see that.
Turned it down. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
What, in the Jack Nicholson role?
Is he called R.P. McMurphy?
Oh, I don't remember.
Neither do I, but let's say yes.
Okay.
Turned it down.
Huh.
He turned down Roy Neary in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, I'm glad they went with Dreyfus.
Is that the Dreyfus character?
Yeah.
Okay. Han Solo in Star Wars, which we spoke
Yeah,
about.
I don't like that.
No, neither do I, but these are big roles.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
James Caan turned down Superman.
Really?
They offered him, and I don't get that casting.
No.
Super glad they went with Christopher Reeve. I'm glad James Caan turned it down and it was still available for Christopher Reeve.
Wow. Okay.
And he was offered the role of Captain Willard in Apocalypse Now, but he turned it down. Obviously, he'd already been in The Godfather with Francis Ford Coppola directing.
Yeah.
So when Coppola was doing Apocalypse Now, he got in a blower to Caan, was like, do you want to do this role? And James Caan was like, how long have I got to be in the jungle? No, thanks.
Wow.
And I bet he's so glad that he made that decision, because maybe they
Was
scheduled.
that the Martin Sheen role?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's like, they were meant to be shooting for like 3 or 4 months or something in the jungle and turned into like a year.
Holy shit.
So he made the right move there. But then he kind of had a bit of a break and didn't really do much acting for a few years, I think in the 80s.
Okay.
And I think Misery was very much his comeback. He'd been away from the limelight for a while, got addicted to cocaine and had some stuff.
It was the 80s.
And he's an actor. So
I'd be
what
more
else are you gonna do?
surprised if he hadn't been.
Yeah. So that was very much his comeback, and he wanted to do that role.
Okay.
And he was quite glad that he got to do it. And that is his other, I think this and Misery are probably his two best performances.
Yeah.
And he's so different in Misery.
Yeah.
He's like, I was thinking about this the other day. I really enjoy him as Frank, and he's very good as the tough character, but he's so different in Misery. He's still kind of quite rugged or whatever,
Yeah.
but he's laying down for the whole movie. He's got no agency whatsoever, and it's a super interesting choice for him, I think.
He was one of the greats, man.
He was one of the greats.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Next week?
Next week.
Can you remember what we're doing?
No.
Okay. So next week, sticking with the criminals theme, we're going to be covering American Animals.
Oh, yeah. I've been keen to rewatch this.
Evan Peters. Barry Keoghan
Yes.
is in it as well. I don't think I knew Barry Keoghan when I first saw this movie, so I'm interested to go back and watch it with him in. Now I've seen, obviously, things like Banshees of Inisherin and Eternals and things like that. I'm super interested to see what he brings to that
He's
movie.
got hella range.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
next week.
Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can stay up to date with us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok at @STH_pod, or support us on Patreon. Everything will be linked in the description.